This place is hopping with activity. I won't ignore my own voice anymore.
Vegeta!
You asked if I was doing well. Really, every day is a happy day for me. But watching you all leave now, I can't help but feel a little lonely. Just a little, of course.
"2022's Genshin Impact had a lot going for it. We got introduced to Sumeru and Enkanomiya, we got to see many Fatui Harbingers, and the lore has grown more and more. Each update brought something special to the table, but no update is created equal. There were some S-tier versions and some okay versions. So I thought I'd go back to the beginning of the year and go through each version from my least favorite to my most favorite. Disclaimer, even if a version is on the bottom of the list, doesn't mean it was god awful. I actually liked all of the updates this year. I just preferred some to others. Also, this is just my opinion, so there might be some things that you don't agree with. Please feel free to leave your rankings in the comment section down below. Alright, let's not waste any more time and get into the video. So starting at number 9 we have 2.8. Yeah, if this was an anime, this would definitely be the filler arc we get so the show doesn't catch up to the manga. This version does allow us to spend time with characters that desperately needed screen time though. Fischl, who I'm pretty sure we haven't seen since that Leonard event in 1.1 I think. I don't know, that was honestly before my time. Xinyan is another character who we get very little of, so I was happy to get to spend time with them again. But well, I mean, not a lot actually happens outside of getting to know these characters a little more. Kazuha and Xinyan didn't get much development. They're basically the same by the end of this. We just get to spend more time with them and see more of their past. And a lot of it is stuff we already knew. Mona, we learn a little bit more about how hard it is to do her job. The only one that I felt had a meaningful time in this arc was Fischl. She's the one that was struggling and later on found peace in who she was and what she did. And yeah, I really like that one. Role players rise up. I will say though, the location was amazing. This was my first year in the Golden Apple Archipelago, and seeing that place fuse with each character's own little world was great to look at, especially Kazuha's and Fischl's. Kazuha's island was just ice cream for the eyes, Fischl's was a whole kingdom, and the castle felt like a very fresh location, one we've never really gotten to explore before. We did get some foreshadowing to the Lesser Lord's power, and even got to speak with her, which was cool. So there were some tie-ins to the actual story, but very little, and the emotional hook just wasn't deep enough because it really was just Fischl who was struggling. Maybe if the Traveler also had their own little world and we got a little background on them, then I'd be more interested, but that's not what we got, so bottom of the list. 10 out of 10 vacation spot though, definitely recommend. Next we have version 2.5. This was the one where we got Yae Miko's quest and the Shogun quest. Now I'll be honest, the Shogun's quest is really doing the heavy lifting here. I love Yae, great Pokemon trainer, but we're comparing updates here and putting Yae's quest next to the others. I mean, I liked it more than Kazuha's. Notice I didn't even talk talk about that quest when I was talking about 2.8, but Yai still doesn't measure up when next to the others. The thing is, Yai's story is fun, her character is fun and funny. It also lets us see how easy it is to make a false legend in Teyvat, which probably means we shouldn't trust every story we hear from other characters. But Yai's story quests lack two things. One, lore that I'm interested in. Honestly, anything we learned about the yokai has been forgotten, and maybe that has a lot to do with the fact that there weren't any visuals about them. It was cute learning a little bit about Yai as a kid, but I just wasn't interested in the yokai like I am the yaksha or even the oni. The second thing is stakes. There really weren't any. Yai wasn't dealing with an internal struggle, or at the very least not until the very end, and the villain wasn't really that interesting to me. The whole thing really ranged from mundane to lighthearted, so I was never at the edge of my seat. A story quest though packs a much better punch in my opinion. Talking about the lore, I am a big fan of what we're getting with the Cataclysm. Knowing what it did to each nation little by little, it's kind of like we're getting a different angle of one sculpture. What we got with time travel was trippy and mysterious, just the way I like it, and we got to learn more about the Rift Hounds, which I'm suspecting is foreshadowing, so I gotta give this one an A+ with the world building. A's character development, of course, gets a lot of attention too. I don't think it was perfect or smooth, because yes, we're not able to follow her through her whole journey. We were there at the end of the Archon quest, and we were there for her first story quest, but a lot of the little stuff in between, we kind of just had to leave it up to her, and then just catch up with her when we see her again. But there's a feeling of completion, hearing her understand that her old way of thinking was wrong for her and her people. Seeing her go up against the Shogun, aka her old way of thinking, aka her old ideology about eternity, it was fitting. Another thing I like is the power scaling. I like how it's not the Traveler who fights the Raiden Shogun, but A. It just shows the Traveler can't just square up against any character in the actual canon story. So real quick, because I completely forgot about Enkanomiya, I'm just going to be quickly adding my thoughts on that part of the updates. I'm probably going to do the same thing for 2.4 when I talk about it. This is going to be real quick, especially this one, because there isn't really that much to talk about. Really, the story just kind of gets us back into Enkanomiya. There's some like big trouble going on, and they kind of like give us a little bit of history on like lizard people. As far as I can remember, there wasn't really much that was very interesting. Really, the most interesting part was the return of Enjo. Honestly, one of my favorite villains in all of Genshin Impact. I mean, I'll talk more about him when I get to 2.4. But it was really fun seeing him again. I remember he dropped some hints about our sister or brother, depends on which character you picked. But yeah, besides that, there wasn't really anything that was very interesting. It looked really good. I really liked how the big tower in the middle of Enkanomiya was like with the branches and the light. Like it looked really, really good. But like I said, it was basically us just going around Enkanomiya a second time and freeing it from darkness and stuff like that. Those Abyss Knights that we also see in the chasm also looked really, really cool. I remember seeing them in the trailer and just going like, this feels like a completely different game. Like seeing them for the first time, I'm like, is this Genshin Impact? This is crazy. But yeah, besides that, nothing else really to note. In 7th place, we have 2.6. Now, funny enough, this was actually going to be last originally, because when I thought back to this update, I only remembered the festival. It wasn't until I rewatched the trailer I realized, oh shit, yeah, the chasm, Dainsleaf, and Upside Down City. We had a lot in this update actually. The festival, I'll be honest, wasn't for me. I just couldn't be bothered to get into the whole history of Inazuma. Sure, I love the idea of characters from different nations interacting, and the Scaramouche tie-in was great. Love Scaramouche. And I get that it's necessary for his story, but I just honestly couldn't follow along. And hell, maybe that's on me, but either way it's affecting the score, so. I also just didn't feel the warmth I normally feel during a festival. I mean, maybe it's cause this came out after the 2022 Lantern Rite, which I just absolutely loved, but the Iridori Festival just felt like it was lacking that community feeling that I would get from Mondstadt and Leeway's festivals. And maybe part of that does have to do with the fact that we didn't get a cool little warming cutscene after everything was said and done. The Chasm though? Now the Chasm had some good stuff. The Chasm itself was pretty mysterious, with the Celestia Pillar and the Upside Down City and the water that acted against the big bad Conria curse. I do have to say, I think it's pretty frustrating we didn't get much in the way of an explanation to most of those things. I know this story is supposed to last like 10 years, but it's just annoying when we get a bunch of questions and no answers for those questions. But we did get more information on Hilichurls, and I have to say, finding out that they're Conrians made me really pity them and the whole nation of Conria. I mean, we already know they were turned into monsters, but those were abyss creatures. They're monsters, but they're so strong and colorful and they can fly. Hilichurls are so skinny and they live much harder lives, at least from our point of view. So yeah, it was sad. I mean, I'm still doing my dailies, don't get me wrong, but I'm doing them with pain. Dainsleif is also back in this update, which is great because it has been a while. I played We Will Be Reunited in July, and I still think the wait to see him again was super long. Reconnecting with him and getting to see a much softer side as well was great. I'm glad we're chipping away to pieces little by little instead of, just seeing him again and our relationship and perception of him remains the same. I do think the best part of this update was the Traveler. It has been hard for the Traveler to be heard, especially since 80% of the time, this flying food supply keeps speaking for them. But I feel like since 2.0, when they originally didn't want to help Inazuma, the Travelers become more and more of their own character, little by little, but still you could see it here and there. And here in this update, we see their opinion on Dainsleif and how they, because the guy keeps so much close to the chest, finds it hard to trust him. Also their siblings' plan, and the whole thing about that 1% chance of saving someone being worth that 99% chance of failure. Not the usual protagonist way of thinking, by the way, and I like that. I think making the main character not that trusting and going back to 2.0, that bit of selfishness is an interesting idea. Once again, it's just great for their character, making them form their own opinion about Teyvat and what's going on in this world. 3.3 is, at the time of this recording, the latest update, and it introduces us to a sort of new/old rival, the Wanderer. This update is basically his story quest, as we see how he turns from Scaramouche into the new animal user. Once again, we get an interesting dynamic between Scar and the Traveler. I love how snarky they both are with each other, and I hope it doesn't end after this update. It's why I was so happy when they gave the Wanderer his memories and personality back. We also get a more detailed look at Scaramouche's past, and we realize he's gotten a pretty rotten deal, basically being puppeted for a good portion of his life by the Fatui, more specifically Dottore, that old prick. I think if Scaramouche killed like an important character, this probably wouldn't be enough for me to forgive him, but he really didn't do anything hateable, which is probably why it's easy for me to want to see him in a better place. Like, if Dottore gets a redemption somehow, he's gonna have to do a hell of a lot more. But I do like how the story itself is stronger than I am, and making the Wanderer actually have to earn his redemption little by little instead of just in one story quest. Also, speaking of Dottore, I'm glad we're getting so much of him. He really is a love-to-hate returning villain by now. We're seeing a lot of him, we're seeing all the different ways he can be cruel and smart and threatening. I think if they continue to do this and also give us a backstory, we don't have to worry about him turning into another Signora. I think the explanation of Irminsul and what they mean about erasing someone from the planet's knowledge was very clear in this update. When it happened to the Greater Lord Rukkhadevata, it was still very mysterious and we weren't really sure the extent of Irminsul's power. Here I feel like they started to give us the rules, which is very important considering that I have a feeling that we'll be seeing this tree again very soon. Now, the reason why this update is ranked lower than the other updates is simply because while we did get a lot of information and I love the interactions between Scaramouche or the Wanderer and the Traveler, I just feel like it was kind of simple the story overall in this update. It was really just us walking around, learning more about Scaramouche, and that was great and all, but there was a lot of standing around talking, moving to another place, standing around talking, moving to another place, standing around talking. And we did get that stuff at the end where we were traveling through Scaramouche's memories. We even did that a little bit in the beginning too, when we were in Irminsul. But there wasn't really, I don't want to say there was not a lot going on. Not enough going on, I guess. Not a lot of characters interacting. Like, we had, of course, Scaramouche, the Traveler, Paimon, and Nahida, and we kind of just stuck with them. And yeah, we had those like 2 researchers in the beginning, but I mean, they're great, I guess. They had a really, really long paper that I couldn't be bothered to read, but they were okay. But yeah, it was a very small Archon quest. Nothing really extravagant happened. Nothing really heart-throbbing happened. It was just learning more about Scaramouche, seeing him get his Anemo vision, which was great. I love that. And then just watching him go on his path to hopefully becoming a better person. Nothing really tear-jerky, at least not for me. And yeah, while I enjoyed Scaramouche, it wasn't enough to put it higher than the other updates. Finally, I just want to talk about Nahida. Can I talk about Nahida real quick? She is my favorite Archon at the time of this recording. Simple as that. She's super calculating, she looks really young, but she has this like chess player attitude with her, while still being very, very kind. And also, most importantly, she's actually helping us with our sister. Oh my god. She's a very proactive Archon. Maybe it's because she just started, maybe it's because the weight of years of running a nation hasn't made her become tired or evil or whatever the reason. I love it. Keep going, Nahida. I'm rooting for you. In 5th place, we have 2.7. For starters, the chasm itself was a good setting for this quest. It gave off strong The Swamp vibes from Avatar: The Last Airbender. I mean, the chasm bed is swirling with mystery. Its rock is older than the Cataclysm, it has mysterious powers like being able to read people's minds, and the whole bed might be a live thing? That's so freaky and cool. I know earlier I complained about getting questions and more questions but no answers, but this just feels different. The Upside Down City was just so tied with the Abyss and Conria. The more questions they put on the table, the more I was like, okay, give me something, please, anything. With the chasm, it just felt a lot more in the background. Yeah, the characters asked the question, what's going on? But maybe because they didn't ask too many questions, and the fact that they haven't immediately connected this to Celestia or something big like that, that I don't mind letting this part of the world remain an enigma. If they do come back here and they start adding more questions and start connecting this to more main plot lines, yeah, the more I want to hear the answers. But where we are right now, I'm enjoying just exploring this absolute mystery. Another shining part of this arc was the crossover chasm team. This unlikely team-up vibe gave off this unsteady and slightly chaotic vibe, and I actually really liked it. Kinda wholesome too. Ito and Kuki were definitely surprises, but welcomed ones, and they worked well with the Liyue characters. Especially liked at the start when Ito and Yelan got in their argument. This was around the time we really started to get more crossovers between nations, and there's something really exciting about that. Not to mention Ito is always the life of the party. I love how he got to Liyue, and one of the first things that happens to him is getting arrested. I was also a fan of the whole self-sacrifice talk that we got throughout this quest. I think it hit all of the right emotional beats, and seeing Yelan's face when Xiao tried to sacrifice himself, knowing why she feels that way and her sort of survival's guilt from past missions, it ended up making me kind of tear up, I'm not gonna lie. Also, for a second, I actually thought they might kill Xiao, but seeing Zhongli come through for one of his own people, it made me respect him a lot more as an Archon. Or past Archon. Also, can I just say that the cutscene at the end was amazing? This is when I started to notice that they were getting longer and longer, which of course I love. Great action and visuals in this one. I hope we can get more shots like this in the future. Now, I honestly don't remember much from Yelan's story quest, but I definitely do remember the ending in the cave. Mainly because I actually really like the villain. One, the fact that he uses poison so much just feels very unique and gave off this uneasy vibe. But also the way he talked. Considering he's just a background looking character, I'm surprised they made the man so menacing, creepy, and demented.
Your contact with the undercover agents at the Black Cliff Forge. It won't take long for people to join the dots. 2 missing person cases will become one as the truth gradually reveals itself.
Poisoning his own master, the voice acting really also helped sell the part. I also liked how Yelan is not afraid to use bad people to get what she wants. Offering him a choice between a job or prison, it felt very Secret Service. 3.1 really started giving us the meat and potatoes of the Sumeru Archon quest. This update, I feel like, is the reason why this quest was a success. Without this, I feel like we would have had another Inazuma quest on our hands. And I'm so happy Hoyoverse learned from 2.0 and extended the amount of acts the Archon quests get. 3.1 brilliantly sets up the threat of the Academia and the Harbingers. By the end of 3.1, we knew what the Academia wanted, who they were working with, and what was at stake. The idea of these humans wanting to make a god to replace Nahida was so hyped, I couldn't wait to get to 3.2. We also get a glimpse of Scaramouche and a proper introduction to Dottore. Unfortunately, both Harbingers didn't really play that much of a part in 3.2 overall, but what we did get in the update was still pretty cool. Another thing that was really well established was the Resistance team. By the end of Chapter 4, I felt like we had a solid team, solid motivations, and a clear goal for Chapter 5. Getting to learn more about the Eremites and seeing them as more than just thugs, and learning what they went through because of the Academia really helped with their motivations and made me understand why they wanted to ruin everything the Academia and the Greater Lord created. Even Dea had negative opinions on the Academia, but she was able to control those thoughts or at least keep them buried. I'm happy playable characters could have opinions like that. So yes, halfway into the update, this story steps away from the Fatui and Scaramouche, and we just saw Dottore for a little bit, and yes, a part of me did feel sad about that while going through the story. But I realized how necessary it was to not try and cram in the Harbingers and instead focus on the people of the desert, their history, their current feelings, so on and so forth. And seeing them join our side by the end of the chapter was not only satisfying, but also added to the hype of the next update. It's like we were forming not only a team, but like a small little army, and I thought that was pretty cool. I finished 3.1 wishing I could just jump into the next chapter right there and then. Our smaller team of playable characters were great too. Seeing these colorful and very different characters be forced to come together because of circumstances was really entertaining, even if the story had them separated for most of the quest. The character interactions, especially between Alhaitham and Cyno, and their distrust of each other, I thought was also pretty good. If I had one complaint, I wish the Scarlet King got to do more. I mean, a problem I have with Genshin as a whole is a lot of the interesting stuff is stuck as lore instead of actually being shown and happening in front of us. Like, I get it, a lot happened in the past, but all we can do is hear about it or see cool art about it. All this talk about reviving the Scarlet King, I know I probably should have known better, but I was kinda hoping we'd maybe fight the remnants of the Scarlet King, hear his story through him. We had this really cool setting with a giant pyramid and swirling death sky, and we didn't do much with it. Maybe in the future we'll go back to the desert, and maybe we'll have a cool fight in that setting. One can only hope. But as far as focusing on this update, we really didn't do much with it, which is a shame. On the flip side, we also went to Mondstadt for the Vinelesa Fest. Really the reason why I love this festival and why I love most festivals is because it's an excuse to see all the characters of a nation come together, interact with each other, and just give us really wholesome moments together. Getting to focus on Razor again after a long time was very welcoming, and the search for what is a real family, is it the one we are born with, can it be the people you've met throughout your life that really care for you? This kind of question really opened up a lot of the Mondstadt Mondstadt community to the point where I realized that the whole nation is really just one drunk found family. I also really like how the Traveler shares their opinion about blood family versus found family, and how they actually believe blood is stronger. It's not an opinion I'm used to with a main character, and what's even more interesting is the fact that this opinion of theirs could most likely be changed considering what we now know about them and their sibling. Once again, this is an example of the Travelers sharing their own opinion and being their own character. My favorite nation is Mondstadt. It's where we started, it's where home is. I love the characters, I love the lore, I love the land. Okay, maybe I don't love the land, but still, I always love coming back here and seeing all the characters again and getting to interact with them, and this was no different. I think the Vine Laser Fest was a huge success. Introducing a new nation is a lot, I get that. I mean, we've got new characters, new locations, new customs to learn, but so far, I personally feel like Genshin is really good with their world building, and they know how much to tell us about the world and when to tell us so it's not too much. 3.0 introduces us to a lot. If 3.1 is to set up the conflict and the goal, 3.0 does well setting up the stage itself, and yeah, also introducing us to the academia and just how messed up they are. It was also the in-game introduction to Kali. She was a really important character in the manga, so seeing her kind of grown up was really cool. I do wish we spent more time with her and she could actually meet Dottore. There is still a problem with her, like, you know, having an ancient god sealed inside of her, so most likely we're going to be seeing her again in the future soon, so I'm not that torn up about it. Another negative thing that I have in my head is this Archon quest really opened my eyes to just how bad a lot of the fighting missions are in quests. Like the sort of training we had with Alhaitham and the knowledge capsule. The game really just threw some boring slimes at us and said, alright, that's it. Like, come on, Hoyoverse, you gave us these fun characters to play with, so let's play with them. Could have had us go up against a wave of monsters, or Alhaitham himself, or something. But yeah, that doesn't really have to do with the story, which is what this video is about. It's just one of the gripes that I have with the overall Genshin Impact experience. But anyways, back to the actual story. First chapter was a good intro to Sumeru, but it was the second chapter that really got me to put this at number 3. Time loops are always fun. You could have characters in shows and games, go through them for years and years and years, and not have to worry about continuity because, well, it's only been a day because of the time loop. The reason why I put this so high is because I have to cheer Genshin for doing something so unique with this update. For me, the best part of the Samsara was just how creepy it was. From all the beeping, to the absolute confusion and mystery surrounding the Traveler as they relived everything again and again, and the best part, when the game actually started messing with the Traveler's dialogue options, the game constantly had me interested as I tried to figure out what the hell was going on. I also just like the structure of this quest. Like after we met Nahida and she started giving us our memories back, and she actually started filling in the blanks because we actually missed some cycles. In fact, when we met Nahida, I'm pretty sure it wasn't even the first time we actually met Nahida. We're used to following the Traveler everywhere when we're in the middle of a quest. It only makes sense since we're the ones controlling him. We probably follow him to the bathroom if the game forced us to, but here, there are parts of his life we don't get to see. And yeah, it's a loop, but we're still missing moments, which makes me, as the player and the audience, feel out of control and, well, out of the loop. So yeah, I just really liked how Hoyoverse decided to go a completely new way with this, and I hope they continue with experimental quests like this in the future. Oh yeah, and I almost forgot, the whole thing with Elazar and Dunyarzad was very touching, really good writing. Seeing her slowly waste away and then thinking she was dead when they showed the Traveler talking with her copy, and also when they showed that final cutscene, I teared up, but then after that they brought her back, and I honestly kind of wish they left her dead. I mean, I feel like it undoes the emotional damage, and I think keeping her dead would strengthen our resolve to want to get rid of the Academia. Still though, ending positively, everything else about her story was very good, and I actually did like her character. 2.4 was the first Lantern Rite I got to play through. I heard the first one wasn't really that good, too much busy work for the player. I don't know anything about the first Lantern Rite, but the second one I fell in love with. This was the quest that solidified my love for this game. No joke, this is easily the best festival we've gotten, and that's probably why I didn't much care for the Iridori festival. I mean, it just had too much to live up to. Going all over Leeway and catching up with a lot of the nation's characters, seeing everyone get ready and help out, it was so heartwarming, and the final cutscene made me actually cry. It felt like a proper celebration. After around a little less of a year of playing this game, it felt like this was sort of like my little reward, getting to see characters I love interact with each other and celebrate together. We got some flirting, some sisterly shit, some uncle-niece like shit, and when they cut to Ajdaha, I just... boy, was that really good. Does a lot of my love come from the final cutscene? Yes. The actual quest itself, well, while it does let us interact with old friends, it is the standard story about overworking yourself and all that. I'm pretty sure Jean's quest was something similar, but just, you know, a lot smaller. I mean, the fact that the final cutscene was able to bring out so many emotions from me. I mean, it's just such an important part of my experience with this game, I couldn't possibly put it lower. At the time of this recording, the 2023 Lantern Rite will be coming in like 2 or 3 days now, and it definitely has a lot to live up to. But based off of the trailers, it looks like they will deliver. We also got introduced to Shenhe and the return of the Jade Chamber. I thought this story quest was really good. I actually started tearing up at the end when they flashed back to her father abandoning her, and then her freezing the wave with her magic. That was really powerful for her, and I thought just the pacing and everything about that scene was really well done. We also once again talk about how the stories in Teyvat can get history wrong, and getting to see that actually happen to one of our characters is a new way of looking at the topic. I like what they did with that, and getting to see Yunjin perform Shenhe's story and give a continuation to that story was really nice. Also, just getting to see different real-life culture through Genshin was also cool and entertaining. At the time, I don't think there was much of that, at least when it comes to like different cultures' forms of entertainment. One more thing I'll say about this update, especially Shenhe's quest, was how Leeway decided to take it upon themselves to beat the Ocean God, instead of calling for the Adepti. The humans were really stepping up and trying to rely less on the gods and deities, even though they were still using their visions. I have a theory that this way of thinking is starting to become widespread, and soon a lot more people will be thinking like Kanaria, but I don't know, I could just be jumping the shark with that. Still, seeing everyone prepare for this thing in the background of the quest, and then seeing them all in action was very, very cool. Really good cutscene too. One last thing, is it just me, or was there a slight change in style with the cutscene since 2.4? I don't know, they just looked somewhat different, and honestly a good different. More specifically with the characters, they just look more bright, or maybe more clear? I don't know if there's a difference, and my eyes aren't just playing tricks on me, but either way I like it. So this is the segment where I'm talking about Enkanomiya in 2.4, which is also where we were first introduced to the area. I have to say, I mean, the way that they introduced it and just the atmosphere of the place was just amazing. I really liked the sort of quietness that came, and it kind of like just showed how ancient the place was and filled with a lot of mystery as to like what happened. And as we slowly uncover what happened, you know, it's really good, a really good story. Once again, yes, a lot of interesting things happening, but it's all trapped in lore, all trapped in the past. But the story that we did get in the present was pretty good. We got introduced to Enjo, one of, like I said before, my favorite villains of Genshin Impact. I love how he's just so silly. He's one of those like silly, powerful villains, which I love a lot. And like just so much personality is in him that I really do hope that we see him again. They kind of been advertising him, I guess, in outside of the main story, and we did get to see him again in 2.5, which was a great surprise. But I hope that we can see him again real soon. He also kind of just made me not trust people, just similar to like the Albedo clone in I think 2.3. He can also basically substitute himself, like, you know, he can use substitution and look like a human being. And I believe he can look like anybody. So the trouble is like looking around and making sure that the person in front of you isn't an abyss mage. But yeah, I thought it was really good. I thought the area was really good. Enkonomiya, really good. I mean, like, for a place that isn't technically in the main story, like, it was that the Enkonomiya was host to a side story, but like, it still was really, really cool. Hopefully we get to come back there again and we get some cool voice. I mean, I think 2.5 was voice acted, but hopefully we get more voice acted stories there in the future. So here we are, the best. 3.2 was such a success. I feel like Hoyoverse has completely let go of their past mistakes regarding the Inazuma Archon quest. This finale felt so satisfying because the story was able to take its time and put all their pieces in the right place. So in a way, 3.0 and 3.1 helped build the foundation that got 3.2 at the top spot. But of course, 3.2 did a lot of the work too. For starters, I am so happy that this update allowed the Traveler and Scaramouche the chance to talk before their actual battle. Scar has been pretty scarce in the game, especially if you didn't play the events he briefly appeared in. Because of this, he and the Traveler didn't get a lot of time to interact, but here they do, and it's great. I feel like without this, their fight would have felt a lot more like Signora's. Cool and flashy, but otherwise, nothing really. The way they talk to each other too was really entertaining. I mean, it's like I said, there are very few times where the Traveler is actually able to talk, and I'm glad that this scene actually literally pushed Paimon out of the way and let Scaramouche and Traveler have their say. It was really, really great to see these two talking, and I felt like it really strengthened their relationship as well. We then have our goal, rescuing Nahida. The game made me want to save her so bad. I mean, come on. I just felt so bad with the way the Academia was isolating her, rejecting her, and trying to get rid of her. I was like, please, just let this Archon touch some grass. It felt a lot like My Hero Academia when everyone's mission was to save Eri, and the show just made you feel so bad for that little girl, you wanted to bust in there and save her yourself. Okay, maybe not really, but you get what I mean. Such a clear goal, it was so satisfying when the Traveler finally set her free. Only possible thanks to our well-formed team and brilliant plan. The team was used so well in this. Instead of coming out of nowhere at the last minute, we all went in there together and then cut to whichever character was important at the time. It was like a heist. Well, it wasn't like a heist, it was a heist. With everyone having a role, even the Eremites, which, like I mentioned when I talked about 3.1, were well-established allies against the Academia. Going back to Scaramouche, I thought he was an amazing final boss for this Archon quest. A boy, boy puppet who wanted to be a god, desperately trying to look like a god because that's what he believes he was made for. I like how he really wanted to fight Nahida. It hits harder because their story is kinda similar. They were both created to be a god, and at that time, both of them were basically told they weren't worthy enough and tossed aside. I can see why Nahida had sympathy for him. Even him calling her by her demon name. He's trying to appear as someone on the same level as her. It's kinda sad. And yes, I did feel bad for him when he lost. I was already sold on the redemption. I'm weak, I admit it. His Archon mecha also looks so cool. The fight itself was okay, but the cutscenes were phenomenal. If this was an anime, I'd love to see the Traveler go up against that thing. I mean, we sort of did, but I mean like a full actual animated 2D fight. Or 3D, sometimes 3D looks pretty good too. Because the abilities it has, it was just really, really cool. Last Archon quest we fought an actual god, and I was wondering how they'd one-up themselves. I also really like the inclusion of all of Sumeru helping the Traveler as well. It definitely felt like, one big spirit bomb from Dragon Ball Z. It also was very similar to the end of the Inazuma quest, but the difference here is, while in the Inazuma quest, the people were helping the Traveler without even realizing it, here, all of Sumeru is giving their knowledge to the Traveler so he could defeat a god. And I just think that's a lot more satisfying. The, I guess, death of Greater Lord Rukkhadevata was a very sad one. Playing that track, which was honestly the best in Sumeru, having the world completely forget her, It's a big sacrifice, and they played that really well. Obviously, we didn't really know her that well, but like Nahida said, that kind of fate is just so cruel. Still, even though Nahida doesn't remember it, I feel like the Greater Lord essentially giving a proper passing of the torch to the Lesser Lord felt like a good bow for Nahida's storyline. Throughout the whole Sumeru quest, she was doubting her abilities as an Archon, struggling with whether or not she was right for the job, most likely because so many people told her she wasn't. My favorite part of this struggle was when she was alone in that black space.
Now that I think of it, I don't think I've ever actually listened to my own inner voice. Do Archons have them? Should Archons have them? Have I been doing the right thing?
That's such a mind-trippy and claustrophobic thought. She was so deep in her doubt that she started doubting whether or not Archons should be doubting themselves, essentially not giving herself an inch to breathe. So to have the Greater Lord confirm that yes, Nahida is different from her predecessor, but that's a good thing, it felt like the confirmation she needed. So yeah, that was very sweet. Dottore coming back was a great relief. I'm glad they're doing more with him like I said earlier. His conversation with Nahida was also really good. It's a shame he killed all of his clones, but I'm sure he'll make more, and it was a smart move on Nahida. I also liked how the quest ended. The Inazuma quest sort of just had a nice but quick cutscene showing what everyone was up to. We didn't even get to check on A, but here we get to properly go to each place and see how everyone is doing now that everything is said and done. It just feels more fulfilling. Getting to see a healed Kali, hearing that the people of the desert will be getting more opportunities for knowledge, meeting Al-Haytham's roommate. Once again, it feels like the Archon quest was allowed to breathe more. Getting this sort of epilogue was satisfying as a player and audience member. And that was it. What did you guys think? Was the ending pretty abrupt? I wanted this video to be short, but it ended up going for around like 30 minutes. But basically that's all I really had to say about each update. Like I said before, 2022 had a lot of good Genshin Impact content, and even though I didn't make any videos on it, I had a really great time just going through the story. The Archon quest, I know I kept on mentioning the Inazuma quest and like going back to it, and I'm sure some people found that pretty annoying, but like it's just so night and day. The way that Hoyoverse has improved in just 1 year, I think it's just really amazing. This is probably my favorite Archon quest, and 3.4 or 3.2 I mean is just such a great ending to that Archon quest. So satisfying, so epic. I am now very excited for the next region. Which, I mean, I was probably going to be excited anyways, but I'm even more excited now that I have more faith in Hoyoverse's ability to make Archon quests. Yeah, that's basically it. I hope that I can do some more Genshin Impact videos in the future. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, then please hit the like button, subscribe for more, and tell me what you, like I said in the beginning, tell me what you guys thought about each update, or at least give me like your ranking so I can see how different everybody is as far as their likes and dislikes. I hope to see you guys more in the future. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Until then, bye.